Let's go get him, son.
To all available craft, the Retribution is in pursuit, but we are losing ground. We need to leave atmosphere now.
1-2, copy. Let's go get him.
Retribution, this is the Eclipse. Trailing your starboard.
Scars, fold in. We're going upstairs.
Pitching 90 for horizontal thrust. All ahead full.
Go flight.
On this, Reyes?
Affirmative.
We got it coming! Let's get in there! Roger that!
All scores, engage the next destroyer!
Today we have more variety in shooters than we could have dreamed of 15 years ago. At this time, Halo and Call of Duty were at the top of the food chain, with the latter eventually winning the tug of war to be king. From 2007's Modern Warfare 1 and 2009's Modern Warfare 2, the franchise would skyrocket into becoming the big brother that we know it now as today. It made such a huge impact that every company under the sun, with the same idea to make a shooter better than Call of Duty, would then try to be the next Call of Duty game, or in other words, the Call of Duty killer, so to speak. It wasn't the first time we heard this term, however. World of Warcraft and Halo in the early 2000s would face similar competition with the same idea, only for all of them to fail. And the reason for that is relatively simple. They focused too much on trying to be like their main competition, rather than just making a solid FPS or MMORPG that other people looking for alternatives could enjoy. Ironically, the companies that developed the Call of Duty franchise would also make the same mistake in the mid-2010s, starting with Advanced Warfare. After the mixed reception of Call of Duty Ghosts, a change-up of sorts was needed, and luckily for them, Titanfall would release a year after, showing a more dynamic range of movement that hasn't been seen in a long time. The powers that be decided to take Titanfall's template and apply it into the Call of Duty franchise, starting with Advanced Warfare. The game sold well, but it also alienated a great portion of the Call of Duty community. They complained about the new movement mechanics detracting too much from the core gameplay they were already used to, even though they had complained about the series copying and pasting each other, but with a new coat of paint. Sledgehammer, Treyarch, and Infinity Ward would all have a turn in bringing in their own entries with the advanced movement spin, and a futuristic setting to match it, as well as the movements added into the core gameplay. For the most part, it seemed that there was no winning here. With Advanced Warfare, Black Ops 3, Infinite Warfare, and then Black Ops 4, they would all get left in the dust immediately after Call of Duty World War II and Modern Warfare 2019 came out. Out of those four, Infinite Warfare was the best of the bunch, and it's tragic how it turned out. Infinite Warfare would be one of the last entries to implement Titanfall style movement, and as well as having a futuristic setting of sorts. Since World War II, the companies have been reverting back to what fans referred to as boots on the ground, which was another way of saying, we don't want wall running or dashing or double jumping basically. I personally didn't mind it. I'm glad that they were at least trying to experiment with new mechanics even though they felt tacked on, and since it was only a response to what Titanfall was offering. But still, I felt that the attempt to change something at the time was desperately needed. Infinite Warfare is the best one out of the four entries that apply the futuristic setting. It has a well-constructed campaign with a great ensemble cast of characters, a cool spin on the zombies mode, and decent multiplayer that unfortunately died really quickly. Its setting was also pretty well thought out together, depicting a more realistic take on what a 22nd century Earth would look like. From the design of the weapons that closely resemble the modern ones we know today, from the crude but effective ships, to the cold but sleek mechs, armor suits and robots, Infinity Ward did a great job here with the presentation. Out of all the campaigns I've enjoyed, this one is definitely on top of the likes of the Modern Warfare trilogy, World at War, and the first two Black Ops games. The campaign takes place between an interstellar war between two factions, the UNSA, the faction that represents Earth and its colonies, and the SDF, who settled on Mars and have been brewing a plot to overthrow Earth and its faction for quite some time. Things escalate pretty quickly, with the Special Forces unit dispatched on Europa being wiped out by Admiral Koch, the main antagonist of this story, who orchestrates an offensive attack on Earth, setting in motion all the events that occur for the rest of the game. Infinite Warfare takes you for a good portion of the solar system, and in my opinion, it was incredible. The moment you leave Earth's orbit and begin dogfighting the SDF is one of the best moments in any COD game. And as I said, Infinite Warfare has one of the best campaigns in the series, and one of the reasons why are the characters. Ethan is one of the most memorable robot characters I've seen in any media form, striking a balance between being sarcastic, witty, and serious when the situations call for it. Him and Cade 6 would get along really well.
Lieutenant Reyes?
The hell is that?
I think we found E3N.
Indeed, sir. Petty Officer First Class, E3N. Enhanced Tactical Humanoid, 3rd Revision.
That's a mouthful.
You ain't kidding. Call me Ethan, ma'am.
What are your orders?
I'm assigned to Retribution, reporting to Captain Alder.
Program for combat?
Thoroughly, ma'am. Born to kill.
Look like you can kick some serious ass.
Well, now you're just making me blush, sir.
Side, Ethan? So old Goat can still climb?
Welcome aboard, Admiral.
Well, now that we're all acquainted, let's get up and away.
Roger, Admiral. Roger, 6. Grounds will escort you to Vengeance. Copy. Raven 6 to Vengeance. Top Cat is on board. We're coming to you.
Copy 6. Vengeance is awaiting your arrival.
You kept the Ethan project well under the radar, Admiral.
Captain Alder knew. First troop-ready model. Quite remarkable. We're revealing him at the ceremony today.
You know I get stage fright, right, sir?
You got feelings, Ethan?
I do, Lieutenant. I do. I carry the brain of a human farmer.
Holy shit, are you serious?
No, ma'am. Not at all.
He got you, Lieutenant.
Did not.
His chemistry with the cast doesn't feel forced, and despite his existence as a robot, he works for the trust of other characters such as Omar, who eventually recognizes him as a brother.
And it's bot, not drone, but deserving attempted humor, sir.
Don't call me sir, I work for a living. Check your bot, Captain, before I throw him out the airlock. See what those things can do.
As far as Ethan goes, I will personally vouch for this stiff metal motherfucker. He's one of us. Ethan, what's the Navy's official policy for a gunfight? Send in the Marine. As for you, Captain. You all right, Kashima?
A little dizzy, Sarge.
The two main characters that charge the narrative are Reyes and Salter. Not much is known about their history, but the way they speak to each other and confide in one another when things get bad shows that there's been a bond that's been brewing between them for quite some time. Again, none of it feels forced, it feels pretty organic, and it doesn't put either of them on a pedestal showing that they're partners or anything. They just simply have each other's backs, and sometimes that's all you need to create a bond. Now, while Ethan, Reyes, and Salter are the most notable characters in the story and have the most impact, they are also supported by a great ensemble cast of crew members on board the Retribution that Reyes takes control of, acting as the main hub for the game's story. The main force you're up against are the SDF, also known as the Settlement Defense Front, basically a splinter faction that broke off from the UNSA after they decided that a 1984 dystopian society suited them better, and as a result, the Earth would become a part of their umbrella. The end of the first mission shows the person in charge of the main fleet, Admiral Koch, voiced by Kit Harington. His character more or less takes a back seat on this one, using his vessel, the Olympus Mons, a giant carrier ship, as his weapon. I think Kit Harington's performance on this one was fine, but not exactly memorable in the way of villains like Raul Menendez or Makarov. I would say that it is one of the weaker aspects of the game's storyline, but the story in general and its presentation is done well enough for me to forgive it. As for the SDF as a faction, they draw parallels to the Soviet Union and the CCP, favouring a strict regimen on its military and its citizens. The UNSA, on the other hand, are more or less a Western-influenced united body, where all of the nations of Earth pull their weight, and everyone has a place, so to speak. Infinite Warfare's universe had a lot of potential for exploration, which is rare for a COD game. Most sci-fi settings are generally pretty outlandish and overly imaginative, but Infinite Warfare feels more grounded in this regard, same as with the forces at hand. We're a long way from a united Earth, but even then, there will always be fighting on another planet, another faction having a different opinion, and Infinite Warfare commits to that reality. The campaign structure works like a hub, so to speak. Once you're on the Retribution, you have a degree of freedom to explore the ship. You can see the captain's quarters and the bridge where you can select the available missions. As you progress through the game, you get to see the other corners of the ship. Take the time to look at it for a second, and appreciate the view. A great level of effort was made to make the Retribution alive, full of people that were doing everything they could to keep the ship running. From relaxing to fixing sustained damage on the ship, even some characters learning how to shoot a weapon through VR. It's a hard thing to nail, but I think this was one of the better attempts to make you feel like you were a part of the environment in the Call of Duty series. It had a similar effect to being on the Normandy from the Mass Effect series, at least from my personal experience. There are side missions you can do, but they don't impact the main ones, and can be ignored if you just want to move on with the game's storyline. It also lets you select your loadouts through the armory, which is fantastic. Black Ops 3 did the same thing, and I'm glad that Infinite Warfare had the same idea. The same goes for the ship that you use for dogfights. The dogfighting sequences can be a bit challenging on the higher difficulties, but are manageable if you make good use of the flares and the missiles. The dogfighting isn't too complicated mechanically speaking, and controls pretty well. It's no simulator, but it's pretty fun while it lasts. The campaign is undoubtedly the best part about Infinite Warfare, which is unfortunately underappreciated due to its reputation in the franchise. It became another victim of the circumstances surrounding it at the time, when people just wanted boots on the ground, or in other words, another World War II or modern Call of Duty without the wall running or boost jumping, which would happen a year after with Sledgehammer's World War II entry. Black Ops 4 hardly counts if I'm being honest, because it was solely made as a competitor to Fortnite's monumental success back in 2018, and not as a genuine sequel to Black Ops 3, which in turn had barely anything to do with 1 and 2, while still being a pretty decent game. Also, in terms of campaign difficulties, Infinite Warfare has the most extensive list out of the rest of the series, and also the hardest difficulty, Specialist Mode, which makes World at War and Veteran look like easy mode in comparison. You can only regenerate your health with nano shots, basically stim packs, and if your helmet gets shot off, then it only takes one bullet to the head to kill you, making this mode harder than Veteran. YOLO mode is basically the same, but with a permadeath twist. But once the dust is settled with the campaign, what's next? Well, there's zombies and multiplayer, which are, as of late, in 2022, dead. You can, however, find a small but dedicated community that do try to keep the game alive in both categories, but don't get upset if you can't find a good match with a decent connection. Multiplayer is the standard fare Call of Duty experience. If you've come from the previous entries, it's more or less the same deal here, but it does apply the specialist aspect from Black Ops 3 with rigs, which have the same function. You also have your loadouts and score streaks, perks that are customizable and can be experimented on for different playstyles. You do have offline play with bots to practice with, which is better than nothing given the current state of Infinite Warfare's multiplayer. Part of this game's decline in this department was that the people who bought this game only got it for Modern Warfare Remastered, which was packaged so that people would have no choice but to buy Infinite Warfare if they wanted to play Modern Warfare Remastered. Not even the zombies mode could save it, which I might add was quite cool, adding in an 80s style spin to the shenanigans of Call of Duty Zombies, one of the most addictive co-op experiences ever made. I wish I had more to say about them both in this entry, but I really don't. Its multiplayer is decent, but nothing special. The zombie mode can get stale after a short while. And when all is said and done, the only shining part of the whole package is the campaign, which I feel like is the part they put the most effort into. Call of Duty Infinite Warfare is one of the most underrated titles in the series, that was destined to fail because of the surrounding circumstances of Call of Duty's status at the time, where it was still popular but people by 2016 were yearning for a return to form experience. In that same year, Modern Warfare Remastered would release, and that helped fill the void, while leaving Infinite Warfare in the dust. It absolutely did not deserve a lot of the hate it received, and I can only hope that one day people will come back with a better understanding with what it tried to accomplish. I don't know for certain if a futuristic setting will ever be explored again in the Call of Duty franchise. Maybe this series will forever be destined to just have boots on the ground and nothing more. One thing's for certain though, if it wasn't a Call of Duty title, its reception would have been like Titanfall 2. In other words, much better. Thank you for watching.
May the road rise to meet you. May the wind be at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. And may the rain fall softly upon your fields. Until we meet again. Semper Fi Marine.